Let's get on with today's webinar presentation on AstaReal Astaxanthin. AstaReal Astaxanthin is backed by 70 human clinical studies demonstrating its free radical neutralizing activity, its benefits for immune function, combating mental and physical fatigue, promoting eye health, and also beauty from within. And here to present this excellent information today is Dr. Karen Hecht. She is the Scientific Affairs Manager for AstaReal Inc., a producer and purveyor of the most studied brand of natural astaxanthin from algae. Dr. Hecht studied algal molecular biology as a postdoctoral associate at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. She earned her Ph.D. in Biological Sciences at the University of Pittsburgh and her Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry from the University of Toronto. And over the course of her career, Dr. Hecht has spoken at conferences and has been on radio shows and podcasts sharing the science behind natural astaxanthin as an ingredient for human health. So with that, it is my extreme pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Karen Hecht, as our guest speaker for today's webinar presentation, AstaReal Astaxanthin, the aquatic carotenoid for cellular health and inner beauty. Welcome, Dr. Hecht.
Thank you so much, Sue, for inviting me to speak with you today and with the audience. And thank you all in the audience for joining. I'm so excited to discuss some of the products that Now Foods has existing and that will launch soon containing AstaReal Astaxanthin. And my goal today is to familiarize you all with this amazing aquatic carotenoid called astaxanthin, so you can all not only leverage its benefits, but also help to explain it to others so more people can access all the great studies and benefits that we know about this nutrient. Now, when you ask most people if they've heard of astaxanthin, today the answer will probably be no. However, most people have eaten astaxanthin before, and it is naturally found in our diet. It's part of a family of nutrients called carotenoids. There are about 50 in the human diet, and most of them come from fruits and vegetables, and many of them you can see in this color wheel of food. So carotenoids contribute yellows, oranges, and reds to fruits and vegetables. And you'll probably have heard of astaxanthin's cousins, beta-carotene, which is orange, found in carrots, lycopene, which is red, found in tomatoes and watermelons, and lutein and zeaxanthin, which is actually a yellow hiding underneath the green of chlorophyll in leafy greens like kale. Now, what is really distinctly missing from this color wheel of food shown here is astaxanthin, because astaxanthin in our diet is primarily found in red colored seafoods. So astaxanthin again is a carotenoid. It is red, and it is what is contributing this distinctive color to wild salmon, prawn and krill, caviar, lobster, and crab. And the best source, or the most ready source of natural astaxanthin in our diet, comes from wild salmon. Based on the average American diet, we consume about 11 milligrams of natural astaxanthin per year, which comes from wild salmon. And what you'll find is that all the clinical studies showing benefits of natural astaxanthin are the majority of them at 4 milligrams. And that's where Now Foods begins its line of natural astaxanthin products in the soft gel form is at 4 milligrams a day. Now, in order to obtain 4 milligrams of astaxanthin, you would have to eat 8 fillets of wild king salmon every single day in order to get those clinical benefits from a diet alone. And clearly that's simply not feasible. And so what we have is a solution to address this gap in our diet, and we use supplementation to do that. Now, importantly, if you're vegan or vegetarian, you're not accessing astaxanthin in your diet through these animal-based sources. And I wanted to highlight, make sure that everyone understood that in these now foods, astaxanthin supplements, the astaxanthin is not derived from animal products. It actually comes from a vegetarian-friendly plant-based source, which is a green microalgae called Hematococcus pluvialis. And this algae naturally produces astaxanthin in nature, which is what gives it this red color that you see in the image shown below. And AstaReal grows this algae in the United States in a unique indoor cultivation environment. So not only are we addressing the gap in our diet to help supplement with astaxanthin, but also we're producing it from a plant-based vegetarian and vegan-friendly source. So if the soft gel is vegetarian-friendly, the whole product then becomes something that vegetarians can access. So to expand a bit further on how AstaReal astaxanthin is made, I'm showing you a few of the key steps in our production process here. So conventionally, the algae that make astaxanthin are grown outdoors, either in open ponds or closed tube systems outside. But AstaReal has it doing it a little bit differently. We actually grow all of our algae in controlled indoor environments. And so I'll take you through the process here. On the left here, what we're seeing is the starting small cultures of the green freshwater microalgae called Hematococcus pluvialis. These are hand-picked cells that are prepared to really start from the highest quality, and then they're grown up into these large cultures that are going to be contained in these stainless steel photobioreactors. As you can see, an indoor environment is something that allows us to really control how the algae grow, what nutrients are available to them, and the stage at which we harvest them. The other thing about growing indoors is that we get really controlled environment and consistent growth conditions. So we know batch to batch and lot to lot, we're going to be getting the same high quality. Indoors, we can HEPA filter the air to remove persistent chemical pollutants that are controlled by Prop 65 and also controlled by regulations in Europe. And we can also help to limit or minimize really the potential for both biological and chemical contamination by bringing everything inside. So our algae are not really fighting for the space to grow and to produce astaxanthin. And by controlling really the growth phase, we can also help to make sure that we only harvest mature algae that are fully in the red phase. So even though you see the algae here are green, as they grow up, what we do is we expose them to high illumination that triggers a switch. They switch here from this green stage where green is the chlorophyll. They break that down and they start to produce this rich red free radical neutralizer astaxanthin that turns the algae red in color. And it's only these mature red phase cells that are harvested, which helps to ensure the highest yield of astaxanthin and also the longest lasting natural astaxanthin, which is important for efficacy in the end product. Once the algae are harvested, they undergo stringent quality control conditions. Our facility in Moses Lake, Washington is USP GMP certified, and the product is as well. And the product that actually goes into the soft gels in the end looks like this. And this is astaxanthin oil that is extracted from the whole algae using a solvent-free method called supercritical carbon dioxide extraction. So before the product goes into the soft gels, this is what it looks like. Now, of course, we have many free radical neutralizers to choose from, and it's important to get a variety. But there are several features of natural astaxanthin that help it stand out among all of those choices. And so I'd like to introduce those to you today. The first and probably most quoted of them is that it is the most powerful known free radical scavenger in nature. And this comes from an in vitro study where the singlet oxygen quenching capacity of different types of free radical neutralizers were compared head to head. And what was found in this study was that astaxanthin was 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C at quenching singlet oxygen. And that is probably the best known types of free radical scavenger is vitamin C, and consumers are very familiar with it. So being able to explain it to them with vitamin C as a reference has been a very powerful differentiator for natural astaxanthin. From this same study, we've also seen results showing that astaxanthin is 800 times stronger than CoQ10, over 100 times stronger than vitamin E, and even 3 to 5 times stronger than its cousin carotenoids, lutein and beta carotene. The other feature of natural astaxanthin is very important is that unlike vitamin C, which is a water-soluble antioxidant, astaxanthin is a fat-soluble free radical neutralizer. And so it's helping to protect an important part of the cell that may be missed or maybe is not being accessed by water-soluble free radical neutralizers. The other feature that makes astaxanthin really great at helping to protect cell membranes is specific to its structure. It actually is able to span the membrane from one end to the other, covering the full thickness, so helping to provide better coverage, better free radical neutralizing coverage. And if you compare in this image to vitamin E, which is too short to span the membrane, or beta carotene in brown here, which sort of wedges itself in the middle of the membrane versus sort of fitting in this coaxial orientation, you'll start to understand what I mean. And there is a study showing that astaxanthin was able to quench free radicals both on the periphery outside the membrane as well as inside the membrane. So when we're talking about better coverage, that's what I mean. Now, while astaxanthin does love all membranes in the cell, which is very important, another unique feature of this free radical neutralizer is that it seems to really prefer to localize in mitochondrial membranes. So as much as 50% of all membrane-bound astaxanthin is found in mitochondrial membranes specifically. And if you all remember, I'm sure it was drilled into every one of us, mitochondria are the powerhouses of the cell. They're responsible for producing energy in almost every single cell in our body, which helps to power basic functions, simple and complex. It's what we run on is mitochondria and the energy that they make. The important thing to understand about mitochondria is that they produce free radicals as a byproduct of that energy production process. And these are shown on the right here in blue, the free radicals. And so really what we're seeing is that astaxanthin is poised at the site of free radical production. These little red blobs flowing here represent astaxanthin, and they're poised right at the site where free radicals are formed to help neutralize them early on before the oxidation chain reaction can run too far and cause more damage in the case where free radicals are allowed to accumulate. So the goal here really is to provide a powerful free radical neutralizing function at the site where it really matters that helps to maintain balance. So you don't want your free radicals to overrun your body's free radical neutralizing capacity, and astaxanthin allows the body to do that. So the other feature of astaxanthin, we will be focusing on specific benefits, but I wanted to give you a general overview because astaxanthin is actually found throughout the body, and because mitochondria are found in virtually every cell in our body, astaxanthin is found there too. And we know from studies that astaxanthin is able to cross the blood-retinal barrier, and it's found in eyes. It's also crossing the blood-brain barrier. It's found in the brain, and it's found also in all layers of the skin. So it's truly a beauty from within product. So we have studies supporting the function of AstaReal Astaxanthin in skin health and beauty, in muscle function, supporting endurance and recovery from exercise, supporting vision, immune health, and really helping to promote healthy aging overall. Now, I'm going to focus in on the now products containing AstaReal Astaxanthin. The ones that currently are available on the market are the 4 milligram cellular protection product and the 10 milligram cellular protection product. Now, the important thing here is that AstaReal Astaxanthin is the only brand of natural astaxanthin from algae that is backed by over 70 human clinical studies. And each benefit is characterized by a specific dose. So I'm going to break down for you today what are the benefits that are the focus of the 4 milligram product and what are the benefits focused on the 10 milligram product, so you can differentiate between these products and understand the offerings and how to explain this to consumers. So starting with the 4 milligram product, we have across all natural astaxanthin products, we have potent free radical neutralizing and cellular protection. Specific to the 4 milligram product, we can help to focus and refocus eyes. This is specific to the muscle function in the eye, but we also help to support muscle function, endurance, and recovery overall throughout the body. And there are some benefits at this level for mucosal immunity. At the 10 milligram dose, we start to add additional benefits. We keep the free radical neutralizing and cellular protection, of course, but we also now help to alleviate occasional eye strain and eye fatigue, often associated with overuse of digital devices. And we also help to support good circulation and nourishment of the eyes, and additional benefits to help support adaptive and innate immune responses. So now I'll break it down one by one, and I'll show you an example of a clinical study supporting each of these. Keep in mind that there are 70 of these, so I'm just showing you, an example of each to give you an idea and to give you something to sort of lean on as you discuss it. So for the 4 milligram natural astaxanthin product, we already talked about the free radical neutralizing and cellular protection aspects in the introductory section. I mentioned that natural astaxanthin has 6,000 times the singlet oxygen quenching capacity of vitamin C, for example. And we'll go into a little bit more detail and additional studies demonstrating this later on in another section. But for now, I'll start with helps focus and refocus eyes, or dynamic focus. And what this is referring to is visual accommodation, which means our ability to change focus from near objects to far objects and vice versa. So what allows us to do this is the muscles that frame the lens of the eye. These muscles are called ciliary muscles, and in order to focus on near objects like your computer screen right now or your smartphone, these muscles are going to contract, which results in a rounding out of the lens that allows us to focus on near objects. It's changing the focal point. Now, when we want to focus on far away objects, those muscles, those ciliary muscles, are going to relax, flattening out the lens and allowing us to focus on distant objects. At 4 milligrams a day, AstaReal Astaxanthin was able to support the function of the ciliary muscles, and the result of this particular study showed a 17% increase in positive accommodation, which means the ability to change from far focus to near focus. So a 17% increase in positive accommodation speed with 4 milligrams a day after 4 weeks. Now, astaxanthin does support the muscles in the eye, but it also supports muscles overall throughout the body. And I'll remind you this preference that astaxanthin has for mitochondria. So it's a sort of a targeted mitochondrial nutrient, as we like to call it. And muscles are particularly rich in mitochondria because they're very metabolically active. So you can expect that if astaxanthin is working well in muscles of the eye, you will also see it working well in muscles throughout the body. And we have a couple of studies, I'm going to show you 2 here in particular, that demonstrate this. The first study was done in young, healthy soccer players undergoing training and supplementation over the course of 90 days. They were taking 4 milligrams AstaReal Astaxanthin, and at the end of the 90-day training and supplementation period, they went through a 2-hour bout of exercise. And a blood marker for systemic inflammation called C-reactive protein was measured before and after 2 hours of exercise. Now, it's normal during a training period, such as these players are experiencing, to accumulate muscle damage and systemic inflammation. And so it's not unusual that in the control group here, we see a 60% increase in C-reactive protein in serum after exercise. What's really remarkable is that in the AstaReal group, we see no significant increase in C-reactive protein after this 2-hour exercise period compared to before the 2-hour exercise period. So what we're seeing here is some anti-inflammatory properties of natural astaxanthin at play here that are helping to support muscle recovery from exercise. Now, when we think about the role of natural astaxanthin in mitochondria, that's where endurance support comes into play. And this study was done in recreationally competitive cyclists who were supplementing with 4 milligrams AstaReal Astaxanthin for 4 weeks and conducting a 20-kilometer timed trial. And what was found was in the AstaReal group, the cyclists were able on average to shave 2 minutes off of their time to complete the trial, and they also increased their power output on average by 20 watts or 15%, which is a significant power output increase for cyclists. In contrast, the placebo group only reduced their average time to complete the trial by 19 seconds and increased their power output by only 1.6 watts or 0.5%. So a much less impressive turnout here. So these are some of the studies, and there are more demonstrating that astaxanthin helps to support muscle endurance and recovery. The final listed here for the 4 milligrams that I would like to highlight is supports healthy mucosal immunity. So our immune system is complex and layered, of course, but one of the first lines of defense is this mucosal immunity. So it's the immunoglobulins that are present in our airways and in our mouth that are kind of the first line of defense, helping to surround and exclude foreign pathogens from being absorbed into the cells lining our mouth and airways. And the most abundant immunoglobulin that does this is immunoglobulin A, which is found in saliva. And generally, when we experience acute stress, you may see levels of immunoglobulin A dropping. But in well-trained athletes, they generally see that exercise actually helps immune function. And what we see here in the placebo group is after 90 days of exercise training, there's no significant difference before and after the 90 days in immunoglobulin levels. But what's interesting is that in the AstaReal group, after 90 days of supplementation and training, we do see a statistically significant increase in salivary immunoglobulin A, suggesting that in this case, AstaReal Astaxanthin was able to support a healthy mucosal immune response, that first line of defense. Now we're going to move forward to the 10 milligram or extra strength astaxanthin product. And the first claim here after free radical neutralizer and cellular protection is helps alleviate occasional eye strain and eye fatigue. So in the previous product, we talked about how astaxanthin helps to support ciliary muscle function. Now we're taking it sort of one step further into applications of ciliary muscles and also experiential symptoms that people may have. So when you're staring at a near object like a digital screen or any near work you may be doing, sewing, cross-stitching, soldering, reading, whatever it may be, when those ciliary muscles have to stay contracted for prolonged periods of time, people may start to experience tired muscles. Those muscles do get tired, and it comes out in some cases as eye strain or eye fatigue. And in fact, one survey done with collegiate esports athletes found that eye strain was the #1 complaint among esports athletes. And so in this study, we're addressing these subjective eye strain symptoms. And what was found in this study was that AstaReal Astaxanthin supplementation for 8 weeks helped to reduce eye strain symptoms, subjective eye strain symptoms. So in the AstaReal group, across 2 different studies, between 54 and 62% of participants said that they felt less eye strain, whereas only 8 to 15% of participants in the control group said the same thing, that they felt less eye strain. And so we're seeing a lot more experiential benefits, which helps people come back to the product if they're feeling a difference in the AstaReal group in this case compared to the control group. So adding those muscle benefits, we also add eye strain, eye fatigue, and that experiential benefit. The next study that I wanted to focus on here is one supporting this promotes good circulation and nourishment. So we know that blood flow helps to feed tissues throughout the body and remove metabolic waste, and that has a lot to do with supporting the function of not just the eyes, but all the tissues and organs throughout the body. Blood flow is very important. And what we see in this study, that after 4 weeks of supplementation with AstaReal Astaxanthin, this group experienced 9 to 11% increase in retinal capillary blood flow. So that's capillary blood flow at the back of the eye. That's helping to support healthy eyes. Now, we also have some studies showing peripheral blood flow and blood rheology in general. So this is part of overall cardiovascular health and cardiovascular benefits of astaxanthin. Finally, for the 10 milligram product, supports adaptive and innate immune responses. So previously we talked about mucosal immunity. Now we're talking about probably the better known layers of immune function, innate and adaptive. And what we're seeing in this study, in this case, in untrained, in healthy individuals, whereas before we were looking at trained soccer players, now we're looking at untrained general population. And what we're seeing is after supplementation for 8 weeks, the graph on the left is showing you T cell proliferation, which is part of the adaptive immune response. And we're seeing that astaxanthin is helping T cell proliferation by 28%. The same study also showed a similar result for B cell proliferation, and B cells are the cells that produce antibodies. In the graph on the right, we're looking at a marker of innate immune function, which is natural killer cell activity. And again, we're seeing that after 8 weeks, at the dosage of 8 milligrams, which is covered by the 10 milligram product here, we're seeing an increase in natural killer cell activity. So this is helping to support adaptive and innate immune response support here. Now, I'm very excited to talk about an upcoming Now Foods product, which is 12 milligrams. So if 10 milligram was extra strength, then maybe 12 milligrams can be considered maximum strength. It's the maximum allowed dose for long-term supplementation. And because in studies we do see a dose-dependent response in benefits of natural astaxanthin, this is a really exciting product because it promotes mental clarity and focus, supports cognitive function, and promotes resilience against mental and physical fatigue. And I'll take a moment to describe a little bit about the mechanism of action on the right. So astaxanthin is known to cross the blood-brain barrier, as I mentioned before. And we've seen in a few studies that astaxanthin helps to support cognitive function, and the results from the studies showed that when older individuals were challenged with computer-based tasks called the Cog Health scores, they were able to improve their performance in these tasks in those studies. We also see that astaxanthin helps to promote normal blood flow and increase free radical neutralizing capacity, which helps to support cognitive function and brain health. And we see that astaxanthin helps to support a balanced and healthy immune function in the brain. So there's immune cells specific to the brain called glial cells, and studies have shown that astaxanthin helps to support a healthy inflammation response of these cells in the brain. And finally, we know that astaxanthin has been shown in studies to support normal circulation and blood flow to help nourish the brain and remove metabolic byproducts, just as we've seen and discussed in other areas, including the eye in previous slides. So now I'll go into a little bit of detail for promotes mental clarity and focus. One example of a study supporting this was done in healthy, untrained individuals who were subjected to a mental load, is what they call. So basically, they were sat in front of a computer and made to do mental math, serial additions for 15 minutes. Then they were given a 5-minute break, and then they were asked to do a second round of 15-minute mental math. And the expectation was that in the second round of mental math, they wouldn't perform as well. They would make more mistakes because they'd start to get tired and start to fight that mental fatigue. And in fact, the average number of mistakes that happened in the second round was 3 more. So on average, the control group made 3 more errors in the second round of calculations compared to the first, whereas the astaxanthin group performed equally well in the second round of calculations compared to the first, suggesting that they were more resilient against mental fatigue and better able to maintain that mental clarity and focus that's required to do these serial additions and this mental math. Additional studies supporting cognitive function here in this case. This was a study done at 12 milligrams using natural astaxanthin and testing people on various computer-based tasks. And they were measuring their reaction time, how quickly they could complete these tasks. And each task was specific to testing certain aspects of cognition or cognitive function. So what they found in this study was a 7% faster reaction time or ability to perform tasks that tested delayed recall, 7% faster working memory, 6% faster choice reaction time, and 8% faster at multitasking type of activities. So these are some of the endpoints from one clinical study that showed support of cognitive function with supplementation at 12 milligrams of natural astaxanthin. And then finally, again, you know, I've shown you some objective endpoints from clinical studies, but always great when people can actually feel the difference. And so here we are looking at subjective mental and physical fatigue overall. So this comes from the same study where I showed you with the mental math calculations, but this time we're looking at what did the participants say that they felt. And so the challenge here was first the mental math calculations, then some riding on a stationary bicycle just to induce a daily level mild fatigue. And then they were given the chance to rest and recover for 60 minutes. And what was found was that the AstaReal Astaxanthin group supplementing for 8 weeks at 12 milligrams a day had accelerated recovery from fatigue compared to the control group. And in the sensation of fatigue, in mental fatigue, in physical fatigue, clarity of thinking, concentration, irritation, and body heaviness. So really great support at 12 milligrams a day for cognitive function and fatigue fighting. Another very exciting development from Now Foods is a new aquatic beauty product. So we know natural astaxanthin has these free radical neutralizing abilities, that it is found in all layers of the skin, and it's recognized as this wonderful beauty from within nutrient. And so what we have now is an exciting new product called Aquatic Beauty, which combines marine collagen with natural astaxanthin from AstaReal and hyaluronic acid and vitamin C. And you'll see later why I'm so excited about this particular formulation, because these ingredients work together to provide additive benefits. So let's break that down. And I just want to point out as well that the dosage of astaxanthin here is 3 milligrams per serving, which is supported by 2 separate studies specific to skin health and beauty. And I will be showing you some of the results from both of those studies. To begin, let's talk a little bit about skin health. We know that free radicals actually do affect skin health, and there's 2 sort of areas in our lives where we can focus on these effects. One is aging. Our body's free radical quenching capacity decreases with age. And the other is environmental exposure. Now, no one lives in a bubble. We step outside, we're exposed to winter dryness, UV, pollution, you name it. All these things produce environmentally triggered accumulation of free radicals in skin. And that can lead to increase in inflammation in the skin, and inflammation triggers expression of collagen degrading enzymes. And as our collagen network breaks down over time, and as our ability to produce collagen diminishes over time, that begins to be expressed as fine lines and wrinkles, and those visible signs of aging that many of us are trying to avoid. And so astaxanthin is able to address both of these areas. So we're not just thinking, late in the game about aging. We're really taking a preventative approach to help us be more resilient, help our skin, face the day, right? So I'll remind you again of natural astaxanthin's excellent singlet oxygen quenching capacity, 6,000 times stronger than vitamin C, and that it loves to be in cell membranes. So all of this is going to come into play now when we talk specifically into how this affects skin health. So in this in vitro study, I'm showing you a result on the right. We have human skin cell fibroblasts in a dish that were exposed to singlet oxygen. Here are healthy cells, and we're looking at survival rate here. Once we're exposing these cells in a dish to free radicals, you see what happens to the survival rate. These free radicals poke holes in membranes, in all aspects inside the cell as well, and, and cells don't do well surviving when they're exposed to free radicals. Then in these blocks over here, what we've done is exposed these cells to various free radical quenching compounds, and looked to see, how well do the cells survive now when we expose them to free radicals. And what you see, which is quite amazing, is that astaxanthin is really the only free radical scavenger that's able to significantly protect these skin cells in vitro, these human skin cell fibroblasts, and that the other examples here still succumb to the free radical exposure. And so this ability of astaxanthin to quench free radicals so effectively, and the ability to specifically localize those cell membranes, is making a difference here in cell survival in vitro. So what does it mean if these skin cells can now survive? What does it mean to collagen production? Because that is one of the roles of these skin cells that we're very interested in as consumers, is their ability to produce collagen. So of course, dead cells that were exposed to free radicals do not produce collagen, and we get 0% retention of their collagen producing potential or capacity. If we pre-treat these cells with vitamin C before free radical exposure, I'll go back and remind you, the cells don't survive very well, as you see from this green part of the graph. And so as a consequence, again, we don't retain collagen production. Now, when we pre-treat with astaxanthin, which helps to localize in the skin cell membranes specifically, we're helping them survive much better. And we can retain, in this particular in vitro study, we see they retained 80% of their baseline collagen production. Now let's combine, as we do in the aquatic beauty product that Now Foods is launching, let's combine astaxanthin and vitamin C. Astaxanthin is able to help the cells survive free radical exposure, and vitamin C can now act on surviving cells to support collagen fiber structure and further boost collagen production. Now we're retaining 100% of the baseline collagen production of these cells. And when you think about how these two ingredients are working together, think about how they're spatially complementary. Here's vitamin C in the water-loving part of the cell outside the membrane, and here is astaxanthin inside the membrane. Another way I like to visualize the cell, maybe to help you out, is more like a water balloon or a bag full of water. Vitamin C is in the water parts of the cell here, but what is protecting the bag or the membrane of the cell? If free radicals are here allowed to poke holes in the membrane or the bag, that's no good. We are addressing a membrane gap in free radical quenching capacity here by adding astaxanthin to this formulation, which provides free radical protection for the entire cell. Now, when we look at the clinical studies, before we were looking at in vitro results in human skin cell fibroblasts. Now let's look at how this affects results from clinical studies. Another ingredient in the aquatic beauty product from Now Foods is hyaluronic acid, which is very well known for functioning in the deeper layer of skin, the dermis, by binding water 1,000 times its weight in water, in fact, and helping to hold on to that water and hydrate the skin. What happens eventually, though, is that water slowly evaporates, traveling upwards and evaporating from the surface or topmost layer of the skin, which is called the stratum corneum. And the role of the stratum corneum is to provide a barrier to that evaporation. It's called partly the skin barrier function. And the health of this topmost layer of skin, the healthier it is, the more effective a barrier it is towards evaporation of water through that top layer of skin. So we can hold on to moisture better by protecting this top layer of skin. And we found in studies that astaxanthin is able to do that. The top layer of skin is chock full of ceramides and other different types of lipids. And we know that astaxanthin is able to help support lipids by protecting them against free radicals. So at this 2 milligram study, what was found is that women who were supplementing with 2 milligrams a day AstaReal Astaxanthin for 4 weeks, overall hydration status was 17 times greater than the improvement seen in the control group. And the other aspect of this, in other studies at 3 milligrams a day, which I'll show you in a moment, they looked, instead of general hydration status, which shows how much water overall is your skin holding, they also looked at transepidermal water loss, which is looking at how much water is evaporating from the top layer of skin. It's a more kinetic measure and more indicative of the health or function of this topmost layer of skin and its ability to lock in moisture. So what I'm going to show you basically is that this product with hyaluronic acid and astaxanthin together is functioning on 2 separate fronts in the skin to help promote skin hydration. Hyaluronic acid in the deeper layer of skin and AstaReal Astaxanthin in the top layer of skin to both hold and lock skin hydration and moisture. So let's look at the next study at 3 milligrams a day, which is the dosage used in the aquatic beauty product. In this product, after 8 weeks of supplementation, the AstaReal group saw a 3% increase in hydration, whereas the control group saw an 11% decrease in hydration. And in this study, they measured transepidermal water loss. So we're looking also specifically at how well that topmost layer of skin acts as a barrier to evaporation. They also saw an 18% improvement in elasticity in the AstaReal group versus only 2% in the control group, and improvement in ridges and texture and redness or erythema in the study. They saw 16% decrease in ridges and texture, 16% decrease in redness versus increases in ridges and texture and redness in the control group here. And one last thing I'll point out is that in this particular study, astaxanthin was being consumed in a beverage or liquid delivery form, which is the same as what's being used in the Now Foods Aquatic beauty product. It is also a ready-to-mix powder. So bringing it all together, I wanted to give you a summary and a few talking points about why astaxanthin. We have so many nutrients and so many free radical scavengers to choose from. What's special about astaxanthin? Why should you remember it? So first of all, AstaReal Astaxanthin in particular is backed by over 70 human clinical studies. And it's important to note that each of those studies are done at different dosages, so you have multiple whole body health benefits. Each one can be accessed at a specific dosage, and I will summarize that for you again in the next slide. Another unique feature of astaxanthin, as we talked, is that it's one of nature's most powerful known free radical neutralizers. It's also a sea-based formulation, or in the case of Now Foods, I think more correctly referring to it as an aquatic free radical scavenger. And the reason I say that is because although astaxanthin is produced by many different types of microorganisms, some are marine species, yes, and so you can call them sea-based, and some are freshwater species, like the algae that we use at AstaReal to produce and harvest our astaxanthin. So in that case, it's not exactly sea-based because this algae is freshwater, so we call it an aquatic free radical scavenger in this case. But in general, astaxanthin is a sea-inspired or marine-inspired nutrient as a whole. The other unique thing is where in the cell it is found. Yes, it is a lipid or fat-soluble free radical neutralizer, but really excitingly, it's a targeted mitochondrial nutrient. So we're really occupying or addressing prime real estate here in the cell for the site where free radicals are being formed. And then remember too that in your water-soluble antioxidant mix, often vitamin C really is the most prominent and well-known antioxidant, but vitamin C is not able to access cell membranes. And so by adding astaxanthin, we're addressing that membrane gap and giving better free radical scavenging coverage to the entire cell. And of course, we want to remind everyone that astaxanthin is a plant-based, non-GMO, vegetarian, and vegan-friendly nutrient that provides lots of benefits that can help round out any formulation. And so we're seeing it in the standalone 4 milligram, 10 milligram, and soon to be 12 milligram, but also in these beauty products. And you could see it easily fitting into a regimen geared towards supporting muscle function or helping to promote eye health. And finally, these days, I think transparency is extremely important to the consumer. And so it's worth highlighting once again that AstaReal Astaxanthin is made in the United States. Our manufacturing facility is in Moses Lake, Washington, and it's unique in its indoor cultivation technology, which provides added quality and stability benefits to the finished product. So now to summarize in this final slide, we talked about these standalone soft gels from Now Foods with astaxanthin. They give you a variety of dosages, and each one has its own focus. So at 4 milligrams a day, we're focusing on muscles in the eye, which help to support dynamic focus or accommodation, and muscles throughout the body that helps to support endurance, recovery, athletic performance. At 10 milligrams a day, we're expanding those benefits a little bit into blood flow, cardiovascular health, which is important for the entire body, not just muscles and vision, but yes, overall throughout the body, as well as added immune health support, including support for the innate and adaptive immune responses. Now, at 12 milligrams, we're accessing some cognitive health benefits and fatigue fighting benefits of natural astaxanthin, all of which are supported by clinical studies. Thank you.
Good information. Thank you very much. And as always, if you have questions about Now products, be sure to reach out to our nutrition team, and you'll see the email right there on your screen, productinfo@nowfoods.com. They answer hundreds of questions every day from consumers, retailers, and practitioners from around the world, so don't be afraid to reach out and get your questions answered. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us, for taking time out of your day to be with us. We really appreciate it. And thank you again, Dr. Hecht, for an excellent presentation. And I hope you'll join us again as the research on astaxanthin continues.